This is your Daily 5 for Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Last week, I was extraordinarily fortunate to be able to go to the Adobe MAX Creativity Conference in Los Angeles. This is a conference that Adobe holds every year. They were doing it in LA for a couple of years consistently, but they do seem to now be moving around because I know next year's, I believe, is going back to Miami. I think that's what I saw, which I was not planning on attending next year anyway, but I definitely will not be going if it's in Miami because that's going to be, it's a lot of travel, a lot of expense. Not that even going to LA was not a lot of travel and expense, but I was lucky enough to go and, it is very hard, and I think I've talked about this before, but I want to repeat it for anybody who has forgotten, or I incredibly found out. And I guess this is just, again, you sort of make assumptions about things, and then you find out that, nope, you're completely wrong about it. I simply assumed or thought, I guess it's the same thing, that a lot of people knew what Adobe MAX was if they used any of the products. I just sort of figured that people were aware of the conference because they do promote it, at least somewhat, through any of the channels if you're in any of the Creative Suite stuff. I've seen Max advertisements, but maybe people just ignore them or don't really read them because a number of people there, that was their first Max and they really had not heard about it until the last couple of years. And so on the off chance that anybody listening is a creative individual and has not heard of Adobe Max, it is essentially, now if you hate Adobe, don't bother. You could just stop listening to this 5 now. But it is a creativity conference. It's 3 days. Now, it's technically 5 because there's generally 2 pre-conference days, and then it is at least almost always, unless this is shifted, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of a week. Typically, it's late in October. I don't think that's ever really changed. And what you do is you go to a place where everybody else there, or at least the vast majority of people there, are other creative individuals in every possible creative avenue you could think of. Videographers, editors, illustrators, graphic designers, people who work at the top, middle, and bottom of different design houses and companies, everything you could think of. And it's probably the only conference that I can think of, and I've said this before too, so if you listen for a while, this will be very, very familiar territory. The only conference I can think of where you have this concentration of people who are purely, or almost all purely creative individuals at a conference that is geared towards, at least superficially, if not actually, but I think it is actually kind of, I don't think it's all superficial with Adobe. I do think there are people who really do want to empower artists to be able to create with whatever tools best suit them. And there's just nothing else like it. And every time I go, it is so energizing to be among those people. And I would recommend it to anybody. If you've never heard of it, and you're a creative individual of any kind, and you have the means, that's the only real downside, is it is not cheap. The conference itself, I think is $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 just for the conference. That's putting aside travel, hotel, everything else of being in one of these. And it's almost always in a typically expensive city. So it is not a meager undertaking. But if you have the means and you've never gone before and you don't hate Adobe, I could not possibly recommend it more. It really is just amazing because you're around people who have such different experiences, and it's, you talk to random people and you get all these different backgrounds, different ways people make their whatever art they're producing. It's just a wonderful thing. And I really just wish that I wish Adobe would kind of spin off smaller versions of it that could be more local for more people at a lower expense, because these are typically very big in big convention centers. They're big conferences. And do I think Adobe could probably do a version of Max that wasn't as grand, that didn't have, let's say, a Max Bash where they're paying a musical artist to show up and having celebrities there? Could they do a scaled down version that would be more accessible? I think they could. I think it would be well within their means to be able to have a conference at least half the price in total that this one is. I guess there's just no interest in them to do it. I knew that they do things like Adobe Summit, that type of thing, but I really would love to see some version of Max that was more accessible and more affordable for more people, because I think so many creators would benefit just from having exposure to other creators who do different things, and also many of these wonderful Adobe professionals, both people within and outside of the company that they bring in to do these sessions. So Adobe Max, if you've never heard of it, look it up if you're a creative individual. And if you ever get the chance, I could not possibly recommend it highly enough. It's just unlike anything else. And if you ever can, you should experience it at least once. Later.